It's no secret that I am a huge fan of ways to generate rage in Rise of Kingdoms. In fact, I think I was the first person to coin the term rage engine as it relates to this game. But there's a limit, a secret limit, a hidden limit to the amount of rage you can generate per turn. What? Hello, my friends, and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and today I want to talk about the secret rage limit that is in the game that constrains how much rage you can get per turn in Rise of Kingdoms. The limit that I didn't know was there, that I wouldn't have figured it out was there, but courtesy of Wick Gaming, now we all know there's a rage limit, and let me show you the message from support that proves it. I want you to look at the second part of this screenshot. The commander can only get 220 rage at most each turn. Extra rage from talents, equipment, skills will be wasted and not saved until the next turn. This is from Lilith support. This is not fake. 220 rage per turn is the limit. Now, if you look at a battle report, you will see that typically you fire off your skills in about 10 turns. So this is basically saying if you were to pull down the maximum amount of rage, 220 per turn, the fastest your skill cycle could be is every 5 or so seconds based on how much rage you could generate. And anything over this amount, 220, is freaking wasted. Well, wait a minute. Wait a minute. There's some stuff we need to talk about that generates rage that maybe you shouldn't be using. Let's go get a look. If you're on board for the idea that you're generally pulling down somewhere slightly over 100 rage per turn, and this, by the way, does change if you're winning or losing in a fight, as we've proven in other videos, that we talked about this sort of secret rage catch-up or rage advantage mechanism when you're losing a fight. That means that you've got about 100 to 120 rage per turn above and beyond what you're getting from just like normal attacking a target, to boost your rage gen. Everything else is wasted. So what are the things that might be wasted? Well, there's a bunch of things we need to look at. Let's start with talents. Now, the talent Rejuvenate is going to give you 60 rage whenever a skill cycle is used on a skill tree commander. But on a support tree commander, it gives you a full 150 rage. Well, wait a minute. If you're already pulling down like 100 rage typically, just from attacking somebody, and you're getting 150 from Rejuvenate, it's guaranteed that you're going to have at least 30 to 50 like wasted rage. Wait, what? That's weird. It could be that this is a talent point, one of them, that you don't need, and you only need 2, unless you're trying to get, I guess, this slowing ability over here, right? But there's way more things that generate rage. There's also commanders that generate rage, like Trajan, like Joan of Arc, like William. There are items like the Horn of Fury that I'm a huge advocate for because it's freaking phenomenal. The War Drums accessory is amazing. There are commander skills that gain rage. You've got commanders like Esong that have a skill that generates rage. You've got Herman, Leonidas. You've got Cece. You've got Sun Tzu. Heck, even freaking, oh my gosh, you've got Gathering commanders that give you speed of rage gain too, right? Right over here. So there's all these commanders that influence rage gain. There are even commanders that remove rage. Commanders like Amanatori and Nebuchadnezzar are actually reducing the rage that the target produces per turn. And there are also disarm effects, which might influence your rage gen as well. I would need to test this and confirm. Commanders like El Cid and Artemisia might be making it so that you don't generate as much rage potentially in a turn. I need to look into that. I don't know for sure. But all that to say, there are all these things, mostly boosting your rage gain, and very few taking away from your rage gain. I suppose one commander who removes his own rage is Edward of Woodstock, my favorite commander in the game for sure. So, all that said, should you be worried about overraging? Do you care? And there's a couple things I want to say. First of all, I want to talk about just how important it is to generate rage. Second of all, I want to talk about the situations that you fight in and how important these different rage mechanisms actually are, okay? And lastly, I'm going to give some sort of extreme examples And here is why I'm actually not all that worried about overraging. Let's start with point number 1. Should you care about overraging? In a separate video, I did a ton of math breaking down just how good it is to fire off your active skill 1 turn faster. And the more skill damage you do, the better it becomes to fire off your active skill faster. And, by the way, the faster your skill cycle is, the better it is to go even faster with another skill. That is because the percent damage boost is actually way higher when you take, let's say, a 7-second skill cycle and make it 6 seconds instead of having like a 10-second skill cycle and making it 9 seconds. The percent damage you do goes up a lot higher when you're going even faster because you're going, even more frequently every single time you skill cycle and you go more frequently. So if you're on board for that, and by the way, if you're not, just check the card up in the top. You can go check out the math for that video. I will make the argument that it is actually worth sometimes overraging to get the benefit of having lots of rage all the time, going 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 turns faster than you would have otherwise, okay? So generally, I would err on the side of overraging but generating lots of rage than not generating any rage at all. But to really understand, can you overrage or not, and is it a problem, we need to look at the situations you fight in. And there are a couple situations I want to cover. Those situations are going to be cheeseburgering, clashing in the open field, but not really committing. And then also when you just like full send and like you're ride or die, you send your march all the way to its death, okay? So the first situation I want to talk about is cheeseburgering. And this is really important. I made a dedicated video about this, card up in the top, for the very best commanders to basically pop out of a city, harass marches that are there, and potentially either get a skill cycle on them and do a ton of damage with an AoE commander like Esong, or you just get some instant proc damage and you pop back into your city. But if you're trying to get a skill cycle and you're trying to pop out of a city, okay, and look, like, let me show you. Sora is conveniently got all these marches outside my city. Let's pretend a bunch of people were stacking up to rally a flag that was nearby my city. For whatever reason, they're in this configuration. If I can pop out and hit one of Sora's marches, okay, and get Esong AoE to hit all the other marches before they notice I'm there and attack me and start swarming me, then this is hugely advantageous. I can get a ton of damage in. Every single turn I can fire off my skill faster is better because every turn I'm out of my city with all these marches nearby where they might swarm me, I am majorly at risk that they will instant proc me or debuff me or whatever. So every way I can get rage when I am cheeseburgering is worth it. That includes any single talent that gives you rage, including talents like, for example, Feral Nature, which I'm going to talk about more in a little bit. But in this situation, Feral Nature, I think, is really good. You want every possible way to generate rage so you can do your damage and get back to safety as fast as possible. The other time where you would want things potentially like Feral Nature is in a situation where you're clashing in the open field and not committing, okay? This is where you must get your skill cycle as fast as you can because the enemy is going to walk away. And you know what I'm talking about, man. Those really annoying field fights where they kind of charge in, but run away, and you kind of charge, run away, and everybody's, the second they get targeted, they run away. And nobody wants to commit because there's an invisible line that if you cross the line, all your marches are dead. You know what I'm talking about. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, this is really important to understand. In any fight, there is an invisible line. You cross it, and everybody's going to target you, right? And so this is why often I end up saying in big fights, everybody in, nobody gets focused. Because with this little tit for tat, back and forth, annoying stuff, you could have a march that crosses the line, gets completely wrecked. Whereas if everybody goes in, if you think you're better than the enemy that's there, if you think you overpower them, you outnumber them, you don't want to be doing this back and forth stuff. You want to overrun them, you want to rout them, you want to wreck them, okay? So in this back and forth stuff, though, it's very important to skill cycle quickly. I will make the argument that anything that gives you rage in that context is straight up upside, because if you don't get a skill cycle at all, then it doesn't matter that you generated a nearly full skill bar. They walked away, or they walked into a danger zone. You cannot chase them, or you are going to get destroyed. So in those situations, everything you can do to generate rage, whether it is the Horn of Fury, whether it is Feral Nature, whatever, is actually really good in that context. But what about the other situation? What about the other situation where you are full sending your marches, baby? You are sending them out there until they die. What are those situations? So one situation you do every day is Canyon, right? Is a talent like Feral Nature good in Canyon? Are you more worried about overraging here, where you've got Trajan maybe? Certainly you have Joan of Arc, if not Trajan. You might have William. Like, yes, you are more worried about overraging in this situation than in other situations. In the field, in that situation I was talking about, where, like, you know, everybody in and nobody gets focused, that phrase I use, at that point, you probably have some Trajan buffs going, some Joan buffs going, maybe some William buffs going, right? Where you may lose some rage, and having extra rage might lose value. If you are in a rally or garrison context, you're full send to the death, but you probably don't have Joan, Trajan, or William buffs, in which case, and I've been saying this for a very long time, something like the Horn of Fury is even more valuable because you're very unlikely to be overraging with a Horn of Fury in that context. Also, another situation where you fight to the death is Ark of Osiris. If you care about Ark of Osiris, you almost certainly will have Joan, Trajan, or William buffs, because everybody understands you need to bring a march that has at least one or two of those buffs, and they're all going to be in the same place. So depending on your context and what you care about will determine whether or not you should care about this limit of overraging, right? Will you go over that 220 limit? I don't care if I'm cheeseburgering, because it's so important that I get rage fast and do damage fast and then get out. Otherwise, all these marches, which are more likely to be in an even tight cluster, are going to just swarm you and absolutely wreck you. At the end of the day, the ultimate test for things like, hey, wait a minute, do I need the last point of rejuvenate? Or do I really need things like Feral Nature? Are both going to determine on the context you need them in and also the testing that you do. But just to give a very specific example about the overlap of something like Horn of Fury and Feral Nature, right? If we just get a quick look at the talent Feral Nature, which is something that, I mean, for this build, for rallying Barb Forts, I'm using it. If we look here and we say, okay, there's a 1 in 10 chance that I'm going to have Feral Nature land, and we look at something like the Horn of Fury, right, where 3 out of every 10 turns your Horn of Fury is going to trigger. It's got a 30% chance. Just those 2 items alone, if we look at the possibility of overraging, it's only a 3% chance on any given turn they both will fire off. Well, that's not so bad, although you're going to have like 9 turns probably or less before you fire off a skill cycle. And so you multiply that number by 9, it's like a 27% chance. And this is really not the absolute correct way to do this math, but let's call it a 27% chance, 1 in 4, that in an encounter, you are going to have something like a Horn of Fury that generates rage overlap with Feral Nature. But also, there's a chance that it overlaps with Rejuvenate. There's a chance that it overlaps with Trajan and Joan and all these, and William. So in those cases, a talent like Feral Nature starts to lose a little bit of its value. So I would say in longer running fights, maybe there's a little bit of concern about a talent like Feral Nature, where, like, look, it's extremely good for cheeseburgering. It's less good in a sustained fight where you have lots of ways to generate rage. So should you really be worried about overraging? I think that for talents like Rejuvenate and the support tree, there seriously is further investigation that is warranted to determine whether or not the third talent in here is just always wasted. Because if it is, I mean, yeah, okay, you could free up 1 talent point. I think that's pretty reasonable. I also think that for talents like Feral Nature, understanding the context that you're using them in and doing testing in that context is like really important. For cheeseburgering, I think it's pretty good. But for everything else, I don't know. In a fight to the death, maybe that's not where you want to be. It's a lot of talent points for what you get. And on the flip side of things, given that we have a limit to the amount of rage that you can generate, should you make every rage item that you can? This is where I would pump the brakes a little bit. I feel really good that I made Horn of Fury. In fact, I feel really good that I have 2 Horns of Fury. I can rally, I can garrison. I would feel pretty good about a 3rd Horn of Fury. I can garrison 2 or 3 things, or rally 1 thing and garrison 2 things, right? Like, I'm okay with that. But now I start to wonder, if this is true, about overraging, which, I mean, it is, right? Do I need to go in on even more things? Do I need 5 Horns of Fury? Like, probably not. Do I also need to make a Karoks War Drums? You know, like, well, maybe I don't, right? Because some amount of time, this will overlap with something else and will be wasted. But it does point to the fact that items that give 50 rage are actually pretty good, because if you stack up a Horn of Fury and a Karoks War Drums, and you have a base of around 100-ish rage, right? Like, you're not overraging. That's pretty good, right? Even Rejuvenate in the skill tree generates 60 rage, plus a Horn of Fury 50 rage, right? Plus the base of 100 rage in a turn. You're probably not overraging, or if you are, it's not by much. And okay, there's a few other things that generate rage that I didn't talk about, because you're like probably always going to take these. I forgot to mention these. A few talents like Undying Fury, you're probably almost always going to take Burning Blood, things that generate like a small amount of rage. So maybe you overrage a little bit, but I'm not all that worried about overraging right now. Will I get a look at a few talents as I was describing? Yes. Do I think everybody should be concerned? Maybe not. More investigations certainly warranted, and as I do it, I'll let you know what I learn. If you enjoyed this video, consider throwing a like on here and subscribing to the channel for more guides designed to help you get value and smash your enemies. Thanks again to Wick Gaming for bringing to light this absolutely, I don't know if I'd say it's ridiculous, but let me say it like this. I think it's fine that there's a rage constraint. I would like if such things like that were in a tooltip somewhere, but they're not. They're a mystery. We have to discover them and find them ourselves. What other things have been true about Rise of Kingdoms and the mechanics that we don't know? I guess time will tell. Subscribe if you want to see when we find something new, and until next time, you have fun smashing your enemies.